What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Views from the Sideline. This is week 4. I've been consistent pretty much this entire summer. I've had an episode almost every week now. And once again, I'm back and I'm here with another very special guest, a good friend of mine from USC. We have Jude on the show joining us.
What up, guys? How you doing? Excited to be on Views from the Sideline. Really excited.
Yeah, and Jude, I heard that you also host USC's Talk of Troy, right? You're regularly on
Yes,
that.
yeah. So we have I'm on a sports radio show at USC, Talk of Troy. You guys are more than welcome to check it out. I mean the content's great here too, so you're gonna get great content no matter where you go. But yeah, I mean Talk of Troy, we talk sports. But I'm ready to talk some basketball today.
Yeah, so I mean, this guy clearly knows his stuff. So let's just get right into it. And I think the biggest news I mean, it's kind of died down in the past 2 weeks, right? Because we had that
Mhm.
crazy free agency start, all those trades and signings, and it's kind of died down now that we're in summer league. But you know, we saw we saw the man, we saw Victor Wembanyama make his debut. His debut was actually not the most impressive thing in the world. I'm not gonna lie. He dropped 9 points, 8 rebounds, had 5 blocks on 14% shooting. And I mean, I watched that game. I wasn't really thinking too much of it, but I knew everybody was gonna go crazy. They were gonna go batshit. They were gonna be like, this man is a bust, get him out of the league.
Yeah,
Like everything came through after
yeah,
that game. So you want to just tell me what you were thinking after you saw that first game? Because I was like, I didn't think too much of it, but I saw
yeah.
social media and I was
Well, I mean, social media is ruthless. Like they're not gonna let the number one overall pick, probably the most hyped up prospect since LeBron James, get away with any type of bad game. So,
yeah,
I thought his first game, it kind of what everyone should have expected. Like this guy, as much as he's this amazing prospect and the talent that he's bringing over from France, he's going to struggle early on. Like there's no questions about that. And his first game certainly showed that. I mean, like you said, I think he only had 8 points. He shot pretty awful from the field. I mean, the second overall pick, Brandon Miller, like outdid him with 16 and 11. But look, I think this 27-point performance that he put on in the second game definitely showed fans what they came to see in Las Vegas. And he looked more comfortable. And I think it's all about comfortability. I mean, he's younger than us, and he's at the grand
yeah,
stage of the NBA. So I think it'll take time. Obviously, I think the 3-point shooting is something that he hopes to bring over. That's just something he did really well in France. But I just think what I've noticed, and I also noticed with Koulibaly, the guy that was drafted to the Wizards, it's just a different pace that they play here in the NBA, and that's something you're gonna have to get used to. And we, they haven't really seen it. I know they came over, played a few games with G League Ignite, but it's going to take time, and I have no doubts that Victor Wembanyama will be a great player in this league.
yeah. I mean, as you said, right, he dropped a 27 point, 12 rebound performance the other night. Clearly
Yeah.
bounced back. He shot well from three. It was a
Mhm.
great game overall. And I mean, I think still a small sample size. You can't really. I don't want to
Yeah.
extrapolate anything. I think that he's going to be fine in this league. He's going to dominate probably at some point in his career.
Mhm.
If anything, he will just be a very elite rim protector for his career
Exactly.
because
And
that's like regardless of whether or not he's making threes and you know shooting well from the
mhm.
field, he on the defensive end, he's always going to be there. He's always going to give you those three
Yeah.
to four blocks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
And
I'm so glad you brought that up because like I mean look at like Rudy Gobert, for instance. I don't know if you're a fan of Rudy Gobert, but he won 3 Defensive Player of the Years. He's made his money in the league, and people consider him one of the best rim protectors. Where is he from? France. So I mean, it doesn't really. I mean, you're totally right. Yeah, like being an elite rim protector is what any team's also going to look for. So if the shooting doesn't come right away, that he can play on the defensive end. Obviously, he can grab rebounds at 7'5",
yeah,
which I don't know about you. When I first watched him, I was like blown away to see the height difference because we've seen the height, we've seen obviously the highlights in France, but then seeing him kind of like get on an NBA court, play against these guys, it looked like an alien on the court. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah. I mean, he's the sixth tallest player in NBA history, I think, and like
Yeah.
nobody's like. There's nobody on the court that's going to be nearly as tall as him in pretty much
Mhm.
any situation outside of when he probably plays Gobert or Kristaps. I mean, and outside of those two, I can't really off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone who's going to consistently like be matching up with him in
Yeah.
starter minutes. So I mean, he's towering over everyone, and I think he'll bring his best. I think another thing that was kind of relevant to the summer league was the fact that he just wrapped up his French playoff performance.
Hmm.
Then he played a few games in the US, and then he's coming. Like he has a lot of miles on his body over,
Yeah.
the past say 3 or 4 months. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, he's still adjusting. I mean, he said it after the first game. He said, I didn't really know what I was doing out there, right?
Hmm.
So it's all still very new to him. And I think, just giving him a year and, seeing what happens then, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean that's totally. I honestly, that's not something I really thought of, but that's, yeah. I mean, he just finished up his his French league and playing here. Yeah, I mean, he's played a lot of basketball in the past few months. A lot of these college guys, they basically have off after March. I
Yeah.
mean, depending how far you make it into March Madness, but yeah, you're off by March. You do a little combine action, you do some pro days, but yeah, that's fair, and I think that's totally a fair argument to use for why Wembanyama. He's still kind of getting used to it, and maybe it's not him getting his legs under him per se, but it's more just maintaining a good physique throughout and not trying to wear himself down because I mean he's not you don't want to wear yourself down at this young of age. So that's totally fair. I get that.
Yeah, yeah. But I think I want to also talk about, the number 2 overall pick, Brandon Miller, whose summer league has kind of been the opposite of
Yeah.
Wemby's, I would say, or just opposite of what anybody really expected out of him. Obviously the Hornets they took Brandon Miller, with the advice of Michael Jordan, you know, had to make one last move before he left. They were like, he said pick Brandon Miller. They picked Brandon Miller over Scoot Henderson, who a lot
Yeah.
of people were saying should have been the second overall pick. And I mean, so far his summer league has just not been very good at all. If not,
Does he still have as many turnovers and fouls than points? I think he's made up for that, right? I
no, I
think I
think I
think
think he has
he
more points now, but the fact that, I through 2 games he had more fouls than field goals, that was insane to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But
No, I so what do you think of Brandon Miller? What have you seen from his game?
what do I think of him? I just think I don't know. He just seems to kind of be in a rush a lot of the time,
Mhm.
and he's very. I mean, I understand that you're still feeling out the game, but for some reason he seems unnecessarily kind of reaching and physical on the defensive end,
Yeah.
which is why he gets a lot of his fouls. He gambles a lot,
Mhm.
um, and he just doesn't. When I've watched him, I haven't watched all of his games. I watched the one versus Spurs, obviously, and I
Mhm.
watched the one against the Lakers the other night.
Yeah.
He sometimes he just like chucks up threes, just chucks them up. And
Yeah.
on the defensive end, he's a little bit frantic, I would say, which is
Mhm.
also why he has so many he has so many
Yeah.
fouls every single game.
Yeah.
So I think if he just kind of slows down and lets the game come to him, he'll be fine eventually. But right now people are just trashing him for this
Yeah. I mean,
performance.
well,
So
I think what holds over him is not only the fact that he's playing pretty miserable and he's averaging close to 5 fouls in Las Vegas right now, but I think it's the biggest they didn't take Scoot Henderson. And regardless how Brandon Miller's career pans out, and we'll see what he does with Charlotte. If he even stays after his rookie deal.
yeah,
But I think not drafting a guy like Scoot Henderson, which seemed to me, and I don't know how you felt, but to me, I seemed like that was the better pick, regardless of where with the different paths they took before going to the pros. But I just think with Brandon Miller, like he's always going to have this thing of I was taken before Scoot Henderson, and that's a lot of pressure,
yeah.
as a young guy, not under like you haven't even he didn't even dribble basketball yet, and you had the whole entire city of Charlotte not enjoying that pick at all. I mean,
Yeah, you saw
I mean,
you saw that the Hornets mascot reaction, right? That was
yeah, I mean the Hornets,
everywhere. Head in his head in his hands, just like, why did we pick him?
yeah,
And it's like, yeah,
yeah. No, the fans clearly were upset. So it's not just that, the national media didn't like this pick. Your own team that drafted you didn't like this pick. And so I can understand from that he has pressure, but at the same time, that doesn't excuse that he still has to play well, right? I mean,
yeah,
you're always gonna have pressure on you regardless. And look, I know the summer league rules are different, so you don't really like foul out after, the 6 fouls that you would in the NBA. Which I think is to me, I think is a little bit of a dumb rule. I think you should still foul. I mean, like, you're not really teaching anything with doing that. But look, I think what he did at Alabama, which was so successful, was he was able to shoot the ball so well, right? He's shooting
Yeah.
17% right now in summer league, and I don't want to overreact with numbers that are like, in 2 games he's shooting 17%. He's going to play an 82 game season. We'll see how he does then.
Yeah.
But it's clear that on the defensive side, and like you mentioned with the reaching fouls, he just he hasn't hit the gym yet. I mean, it's kind of that simple. He doesn't have the legs under him right now to deal with the speed. And like we said with Wembanyama, like the speed of the game comes different. You're seeing it here with Brandon Miller too. The speed he's, especially on the defensive side. Offensive side, he's able to get into the lane to do what he wants sometimes. But on the defensive side, he's getting beat. And
Yeah.
he's not getting beat by top guys. He's getting beat by guys who will probably be playing in the G League this year. So
Yeah.
that is something you have to look at. And I know that we've, you know, the defensive side of the NBA has kind of vanished in recent years with, teams becoming just a lot more offensive,
Yeah.
juggernauts. But if you're going to be successful in this league, regardless of where you stand between the 1 through 13 position on a roster, you have to be able to play defense. And so for me, if Brandon Miller, if there's anything he can work on, going into the future and before his rookie year, it's playing defense. And I mean, Charlotte's not isn't a great defensive team. So being able to be some sort of good defensive player would go a long way to be on Charlotte.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. But I also don't think Charlotte in particular is a great situation for someone who
No.
needs to develop. So that's another thing for me because that organization is genuinely just a mess. I mean, they just got acquired by a new owner, right? A new ownership
Mhm.
group. So that's also going to take, play into, how they revamp their staff and everything. So it's just I don't think Charlotte was a great situation for him to go. I think Scoot would have been better for Charlotte as
Yeah.
he's much more NBA ready. He would have been,
Mhm.
come in and contributed with LaMelo as opposed to, having maybe needing a year or two to develop.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's just
And,
tough for Brandon.
yeah, and that's the other thing. I think the knock that people probably have on Brandon Miller is, he's not being able to find also his offensive game. But I think getting a guy like LaMelo Ball, who's obviously not playing in summer league because he doesn't, and he
Yeah.
just got $250 million, so he's probably enjoying a vacation somewhere. But I think for like a guy like Brandon Miller, he needs to play along a guy like LaMelo Ball, who's a fantastic passer, can facilitate the ball, and I mean, Brandon Miller, he's going from, college where he was kind of he could get a bucket on his own, where the NBA, it's going to be a little tougher. And so being able to have a facilitator on offense like LaMelo Ball, who can distribute the ball, find you in, the open corners, maybe on the elbow, like finding that and having a guy like that. They don't have a guy like that in summer league right now that I can look at and be like, oh, James Bouknight's going to kind of do what,
Yeah,
LaMelo
yeah.
Ball does on the court, right? So I think, we'll
James
seeing
Bouknight's got
Brandon.
not getting 250 million.
Yeah, exactly. He's not getting paid the big bucks. So I think seeing seeing him with some NBA talent, I think we might get a different perspective of what he can do, obviously on the offensive end. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, hopefully, honestly, it could be a situation, this kind of reminds me of most immediately, like when Kristaps was drafted by the Knicks, and the Knicks, they absolutely hated, despised that pick.
yeah,
And then,
yeah,
for the years before he got injured, he turned out to be, a very good player. So, if
yeah.
it's something like that, that'll be a nice story. And I hope the best for Brandon Miller. Um,
Yeah, I do too. I just, man, that the pressure, like I said, with you're basically your whole city not liking you after you get drafted. That's got to be tough. So yeah, I hope he can turn it around a little. Yeah.
yeah, but in general, with the summer league, there's not you can't read in too much into it. We'll come back during the year and really kind of have a more
Yeah.
educated estimate of what these guys are going to be looking like, I would
Yeah,
say.
I mean, like you said, I mean, we see performances in the summer league time sometimes where we're like, wow, that guy looks like the next great player in this league, and then they turn out to be a bust. And then you could say the opposite, where you have, I mean, when I've looked back, I haven't seen names that have completely struggled like Brandon Miller. So I will admit, like there are reasons of concern for Brandon Miller, especially like we mentioned with
Yeah.
the turnovers and the fouls, because those are two things that I mean, I was preached to as like a high school player. Those are like two things you just can't do, right? You can't commit fouls and you can't turn the ball over. That is you're playing losing basketball. But I guess that's the best place to play it in Charlotte because they haven't made the playoffs since 2015. So I guess
Yeah.
I guess he's playing their brand of basketball. But I think with Brandon Miller and other guys like Wembanyama, And I know Scoot Henderson is out, but yeah, like you said, you can't overreact with some of these stat lines. This is summer league. These are guys, and to me, when if I were to talk to a player in summer league, I would say just go out there and just shoot as much as you can, because at the end of the day, like, don't worry about the shooting percentage. You can think about it a little, because obviously if you're shooting, maybe like 0 for 7, 0 for 8, stop shooting maybe. But like, get your legs under you. This is summer league. Like, if you've
Yeah.
already been drafted, there's no reason to not go out there. You kind of already have a solidified roster spot, especially if you're a top pick. Just go out there, play your best, and also don't do just points. I mean, look for how you can affect the game. Like you said with Wembanyama, being able to play defense, being able to be that good rim protector that they also want, and not just the offensive player that they get. And then just being able to, assist and get rebounds. I think those are all more important things than we just look at points.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of one final point on this. Yeah, I think Wembanyama was a perfect example of that, right? In his first game, he was not shooting well. He was not in a rhythm. He was not hitting shots that he was normally hitting,
Yeah.
from the mid range and from the three. But he was passing well. He was obviously his rim protection was elite. He was doing all the other little things, and those kind of added up to so it still be a solid game. He was rebounding the ball, and yeah, I totally agree with what you said that if you can find other ways to contribute in the game when you're off, or if you're just consistently off, finding other ways to add value to your team can still give
Mhm.
you a spot in the NBA.
Exactly. I mean, 100. We see guys like, I mean, PJ Tucker has made a living off the corner three and being able to rebound.
Yeah.
Like, there are players in the league that don't need to score. I mean, I don't want to go back to the 90s, but you look at Dennis Rodman, and it's obviously a different age of basketball, but he made millions of dollars, won 3, 4 championships with the Bulls, couldn't shoot from 15 feet. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, you don't always have to score. Now, obviously, if you're getting drafted like a guy like Brandon Miller, there is an expectation to be able to be that scorer. Wembanyama, there is that expectation. Scoot Henderson, there is that expectation. But these guys who get drafted later in the lottery, you know, I I don't. One name I really like, that was drafted was Jaime Hawkins of the Heat.
Oh
That is
yeah, yeah.
that is a guy that obviously, us fellow Trojans, we hate UCLA, and it's
Yeah.
fair to hate UCLA. We don't like them, but you got to respect the game that Jaime Hawkins brings on the court, and he's a fantastic player, and he's kind of a guy that I look at as like, he the offensive tools are there, and he can score when he wants to, but he's a guy that can bring from all dimensions. He's able to rebound, he's able to pass. Maybe he's not the best passer, but he does more like of a 3 and D. And I feel like we get trapped with the idea that maybe like being a 3 and D is bad, but it's really not. I mean, the
No,
top
I mean
five
that's something
percent
so valued in this league today,
exactly.
being 3 and D.
Yeah, and just yeah, exactly. It's something so valuable. I mean, players make 25, $30 million off being 3 and D. So I mean, Max Strus just got paid a bunch of money to go to Cleveland. So I mean, these
Yeah.
guys make money regardless. It's just that if you're a top pick, you've just also got to flourish and be that franchise player as piece as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So I think we're gonna move a little bit away from the summer league and go into more of the free agency stuff. So just kind of two small tidbits of news, and then I want to do just one kind of big thing at the end. But apparently, with the Celtics and Jalen Brown, they are coming close to reaching an extension, which to me was kind of surprising and kind of is a little bit. I'm really interested to see what the contract finally is, right? Because Jalen Brown
Mm,
is eligible for this 295 million supermax extension, right? And that would be
mm,
the biggest deal in NBA history going to Jalen Brown, which is kind of crazy to me.
yeah.
Um, but they seem to be the negotiations as of yesterday night were reported to be going well, and they're closing in on a deal. So I'm just wondering, how is that deal going to be structured? What is the money that they're giving him? Because if they end up giving him that 300 million, I'm not particularly liking that deal. But if they've somehow
Yeah.
managed to negotiate with him, they get him to buy into the team. They say we're going to do this and this. With Kristaps now on the team, we're going to be able to make a run. We're going to finally get you that ring. And maybe they've gotten him for less money. I don't really know. And we don't know yet what the deal is. But the fact that
Mhm.
they're going towards a deal just makes me kind of really interested to see what it could be.
Yeah,
Um,
I think Jalen Brown. Obviously he's had a remarkable career with. I mean, I wouldn't say remarkable, but he's been a hell of a second option for the Boston Celtics. Yeah, I think, look, $300 million obviously is a crazy amount of money, regardless. But it, in the long in the long term, $300 million might be the right marketplace for him in 2-3 years. Like I mean, I don't want to bring this over to football, but I look at a guy like Dak Prescott who got paid a few years ago, got paid 40 million, and that was the highest paid contract at the time for a quarterback,
Yeah.
or one of the highest, and now he's the ninth, 10th highest paid quarterback. So I think we look, $300 million is a lot of money, but if you think he can stay around, you think he can lead you to a championship, and that's the question. I mean, do you think that Jalen Brown can win you a championship with the core you have right now? Do you think a duo of Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum? I don't think you get much better because of the age. I mean, these are two young guys that
Yeah.
have already played together since 2018, around there. They've been together for a long time. They have the chemistry. It's now about finding the right pieces to put around them. And I know losing guys like Marcus Smart's tough, but look, at the end of the day, $300 million might not be a lot in the long run, and that's kind of what I'm trying to say. With the
So
money
you're
part.
so are you for you would be fine with giving him 300 mil? Or,
The
if you
problem,
feel as if, you know, I mean, I can agree with you on the fact that, yeah, they've consistently been competing for a championship, right? They made the finals in 2022, Eastern Conference Finals this year, Eastern Conference Finals when they made these 2018.
yeah.
I'm off the top of my head, I'm not able to get it, but they've been consistently a top team in the
I
East.
mean, they
They've
made the
been making
finals. They made the finals 2 years ago. I mean,
Yeah, they've been consistently making deep runs in the playoffs. So I guess I can agree with the fact. And the assumption is, they're young, so they're going to keep improving. Tatum's only going to get better. Brown's only going to get better. And yeah, I mean, last season was Tatum's best season
Mhm.
in the regular season so far in his career. So yeah, I can agree with the idea, right? The premise that is that they're young. You're gonna get them for a lot. You're gonna be able to keep them around. You're gonna consistently be competing for
Yeah.
championships. But where I get a little bit stuck is what if what if it doesn't work out and then you're just ending up, let's say in 2 years, right? You have a bunch of issues. This team isn't looking exactly like it is right now. You've sent
Mhm.
Kristaps off somewhere and it's kind of you and Tatum, Brown and Tatum as a core, and then, kind of a miscellaneous of guys. And you don't really know what to do with this large contract. Or, if Brown underperforms, for
Mhm.
the payday that he's getting, I kind of question it. So I don't necessarily know if I would want to give such a big contract to him. I mean, if I
Yeah.
could reduce it, negotiate it down a little bit, maybe take off 10, 15 mil in a year,
Yeah.
that's a lot of money, but you know, getting something a little more
Yeah.
economical, I think just seems better to me.
I mean, yeah, I'm always going to agree if you can get a player for cheaper. I mean, that's always the best option. Paying him $300 million is probably not the smartest move. But then you kind of question, okay, he's going to go into this season now. He's going to make 28 million this year, and then he's an unrestricted free agent. I mean, then
Yeah.
I think the question becomes not okay. If you can't get the contract, if you can't come to a deal now, what do you do with him this season? Like it really depends. Like if he's not, like you said, if he's not performing, this is like he doesn't get his contract. If he's not performing, are you just gonna let him walk for free? I mean, if you can't get a deal done now, and then you add on the pressure next summer where you have to go into where you go into free agency next summer where he does have the power of, okay, I'm an unrestricted free agent. I can test the market. I don't really I can talk to you guys, but I'm not a restricted free agent. You don't have to match my offer. I can kind of go anywhere I want. Then the question is like, do you maybe trade him midway through the season? Now, but that's obviously more as like if you don't get a deal done. But I think you have to work out a deal because as much as you can get pieces and you can get franchise guys through free agency and the draft. These guys don't just come around every day. Again,
Yeah.
Jalen Brown, and I'm not saying that Jalen Brown is that special of a player, but he's been with your team for now 7 years, 6 years, 7 years, and he's shown progression. Now maybe he has to work on that left hand a little bit because it's not great. And that's
That
certainly
game
something he's got to
seven was
work on.
rough. That was
Yeah, I
rough.
mean, look, don't get me wrong. I think there is a bad taste in a lot of Boston Celtics fans' mouth right now, just the way that I think that team performed in the postseason. And as great as they looked at moments, I mean, you talk about the Eastern Conference Finals against the Heat. You're down 3-0. It looked awful. And they obviously
Yeah.
came back, but then that game 7 was disgusting. So it was like, what did you win the 3 games for? So I think probably most Boston fans are. I would imagine they have to be split on this, right? But I think
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you're not going to find a guy who he's going to give you like 28 and 6. You know, he's going to give you good points when you need him. So I just I think you got to pay him. I just that's how I look at it. You have to pay him because if you don't keep him around, you're going to regret it. And if he walks away for nothing, you're going to be even more heartbroken.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Walking away for nothing, that destroys the team that you have. I mean, it's
Yeah,
you're left with really nothing
yeah,
um after that. So I can definitely see that. Another big thing that's been going on has been this whole Dame trade possibility, right? He finally
yeah,
requested a trade. Like I never expected that. I thought he was just gonna be like, I'm gonna be here for the long haul. I'll be here for the rebuild,
yeah,
whatever. But apparently not. Requested the trade, but the trade itself was also really, really weird because his agent effectively told every front office except for Miami that, if you're trading for me, you're trading for someone who doesn't want to play
yeah. I don't
with
like
your
that.
organization.
I really don't. I don't like when agents and players do that. Look, you can have your options, and you can behind closed doors, you can be very specific on what you want and where you want to go. I just and I get it. You could be like, oh well, the agent's helping out every other team to be like, oh, like he's not going to play for you type. But I just think to just go and publicly say if you're going to try to trade for Damian Lillard in your name and your franchise isn't the Miami Heat, don't even bother. That kind of, I mean, you're kind of pigeonholing yourself now, and you're saying, okay, we have to work a deal with Miami, or he's going to be here. I mean, the Blazers GM came out literally yesterday and said they're willing to wait months.
Yeah.
I mean, the Blazers aren't in a rush. The Blazers, I mean, look, I get Damian Lillard and the media and everyone, like first take, they're going to push and say, look, this trade's gonna happen. This trade's gonna happen. But if you're the the general manager for the Blazers, you're gonna wait a couple months because you're gonna take the best deal possible. Look, I
Yeah.
know Dame says he only wants to play in Miami, but if Miami's gonna only offer me Tyler Hero and maybe a couple first round picks and Duncan Robinson, I mean, you got to think that. So when I first got into basketball, Damian Lillard was the first player. The first game I ever really watched of basketball was the 2014 Damian Lillard game winner against Houston in the first
Oh,
round when it was
really?
3-2. That was like the first buzzer beater I've
That's
seen,
amazing. That's a great
and
first game.
it, and it honestly, like, it was such a um I just looked at the NBA different because I was like, I'd never seen a buzzer beater in my life, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my god, this is what NBA basketball is all about. So there's no question that Damian Lillard has been a key piece for the Blazers since 2011, 2012, whenever he was drafted. But at the same time, you have a obligation as a general manager for the Blazers to make what's best for your franchise. Look, Damian Lillard, he's been a hell of a player, and he's not a hometown hero, not a hometown kid, but he's been that guy that's grown through Portland. He's basically gone through his teenage years to now 30, 32. So while that's great, you have to make what, and I don't want to keep repeating myself, but you got to make the best deal for your team. That's to me, and it's okay to wait months for that.
Yeah, I really like your point about how it's not even that it's not just right. Dame obviously he wants what he wants, but
Mhm.
Portland doesn't really get anything out of trading Dame to Miami. There's no incentive
Yeah,
for Portland to trade, right? They're going into their rebuild, and nothing
yeah,
Miami can send them is particularly enticing. I mean, maybe
exactly.
Tyler Hero, but outside of that, right? If you're getting picks, Miami's probably going to be good for the next few years. So any picks of
Mhm.
theirs are not going to generate, generational talents that you can build that you can put alongside Scoot
Yeah,
and in 5 years they're all going to be playing together um and competing at the top level. So my question, the thing is for me is Miami objectively just doesn't seem like a good trade partner at this point. They kind of
Mhm.
have given all their like Gabe Vincent left, Max Strus is gone. The picks aren't particularly valuable. You're obviously not going to trade away Bam or something
Mhm.
to get
Yeah,
Dame. So
yeah,
it's just kind of confusing as to why even Portland would consider a deal with Miami at this point. There's a lot more incentive to explore the rest of the league.
Mhm.
So I just think it was kind of I think what'll happen is they'll probably wait and eventually someone will cave in and Dame will
Yeah,
be traded.
yeah,
But I just think it was completely pointless to be like, yeah, I only want to go to Miami if I'm
yeah,
requesting a trade.
yeah. And I mean, look, Dame wants to win a ring, And if you're going to go to a team like Miami, who, I mean, they kind of got decimated free agency. I mean, they lost Gabe Vincent, they lost Max Strus. I believe they brought back Caleb Martin. I think Caleb Martin stayed with the Heat. But look, Dame is a fantastic player. He's a great player. Is that team winning a championship in the East? I mean, I know he wants to win. And if you're gonna look, if you're gonna trade for him, you're probably gonna have to give up Hero. You're probably gonna have to give up, Duncan Robinson. I don't know who else, but at that point, you're rocking Jimmy Butler and Damian Lillard and Bam Adebayo and
Kevin Love.
Kevin Love, and maybe the rookie Jaime Jaquez, maybe he shipped off to Portland too. So it almost like it doesn't make a lot of sense why just Miami. I mean, it feels like he should also go to another team that maybe he's closer to a contender. I mean, I know there's not a lot. I mean, I think the Bucks are one team that would be interesting,
The
and I
Bucks
know
would
that
be
it would.
really interesting.
I know it'd be a weird trade they'd have to work out because obviously, if they're going into this rebuilding, why would you take on kind of an older Chris Middleton who they just trade for? Maybe it's more like you trade for Drew Holiday that can be defensive foundation for your franchise. But I don't see why he doesn't see. I just like you said, like why are you closing your options off to just the Miami Heat? And I obviously can go back and be like, no, I want to be traded anywhere else, but you're at this point where it's like, why would you want to pigeonhole yourself when no team has really made any offers yet? I mean, I don't know of any offers yet that have been made, but if nobody's made offers yet and you're still making the case that I don't want to go anywhere else by Miami, I don't know. I think he should have explored his options a little bit better. And I don't know if maybe he probably won't end up in Miami. Maybe we'll see him in somewhere else that the Blazers find that have the best deal.
Yeah, I think the Bucks, the Lakers are always going to be in the talks. The Clippers, just a bunch of these teams that, well, the Bucks are going to be competitive at the top level,
Yeah.
but these kind of teams that are, that are going to be fourth, fifth seeds probably, and getting Dame would kind of boost them up the ladder in
Yeah.
the standings. I think there's a bunch of teams like that you could explore options with, but then no team wants to trade for someone who doesn't want to play with them, especially when that team's trying
Yeah.
to compete for a
Yeah.
championship, right?
Yeah.
Um, right. Especially recently, I feel like we've seen more and more when a star is disgruntled with the team will ship
Mhm.
them off as quickly as
Yeah.
possible. They don't kind of stick around and try and make it work out at all. So trading for if Dame comes to, let's say, even the Milwaukee, and he's effectively like, I don't want to play here. I don't. There's no incentive for Milwaukee to do that
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean that's the other thing. What franchise is going to want you? You don't want to play there. It's a very tricky situation right now because like you mentioned, he's been this very loyal guy. He's been this very loyal guy to Portland, and it's kind of hard to believe he even requested a trade. But if I was Portland, I was like, why did we just sign Jeremy Grant to 5 years, $250 million if you're going to leave?
That was the other
I
thing for
mean,
me.
why
Portland,
would?
I think Portland is also Portland might even be in the situation where they're kind of on the cusp of, or they can't really decide whether or not we should full on tank or we should full on
Yeah.
try and compete, because I think the idea for them is if Dame is staying, we don't trade Dame. We have Jeremy Grant, we have Yusuf Nurkic. Scoot can come in and maybe play some sort of role, and we can be competitive, right?
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily want to like close off that option, but I don't see that
Mhm.
team even competing for a championship. So I don't necessarily know why they did that in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, especially out in the West, I just that team doesn't get it done against, I mean, the top dogs. I mean, I'm looking the NBA champions, the Denver Nuggets. Like they're not going to get
Yeah.
it done against them because that's to me that's what the I guess the highest the best team in obviously the NBA right now is. But yeah, I mean that was a shocking. I mean, if I was Jimmy Grant, I was like, man, I thought Dame was going to be here too. I think everyone thought Dame was going to be there, but yeah, I don't know, man. Dame is as great and loyal as he's been. I don't think he's handled this situation very well. Just requesting a trade. You know, it almost seems like why didn't you do this maybe 2 3 years earlier? I mean, the Portland
Yeah.
Trailblazers haven't had made any noise in postseason in recent years. The last time I remember them, I think they were getting swept by like Anthony Davis, or maybe that was the other way around. I mean, they just haven't been the same team that they were kind of in 2016, 2017, where we saw the consistent, second, third round exits from them. Um, but I think Damian Lillard, wherever he goes, he's going to be an impactful player. But is he going to win the championships? We'll see.
Yeah, it's just really tough to say. We'll see what happens when that trade happens. I'm sure. Well, I don't know if that trade will happen at this point, but
Yeah.
if something like that happens, I'm sure it'll be big. It'll
Yeah.
be
Oh,
massive. It'll
it'll be
change
massive.
something.
But I don't think I do preface this with saying I don't think it will be like the Rudy Gobert trade. And I think that to me is that's a big outlier in the NBA. I think probably a lot of teams look at it as like, I would imagine teams have to look at it as like, okay, that just an enigma,
Yeah,
that just
you
didn't,
cannot use that as
that
a benchmark for anything.
because I mean, they shipped over, I think 6, 7 first rounders and 4 or 5 assets of players. I mean, that's just unreasonable. No team, the NBA could not sustain a league if you're trading Rudy Gobert for 10 assets. That can't happen. So I'd imagine it'd be in the 4 or 5, first round picks, and then 2 impactful players at least for a guy like him.
Yeah, because if Kevin Durant was traded for less than Rudy Gobert, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's no way you can use that as a benchmark. You can't say if Rudy Gobert is getting 7 first
Yeah.
round picks, Kevin Durant's getting 10 or something. Teams are just gonna be
Yeah. No,
trading away
exactly.
their futures for decades.
Exactly. Like, yeah, teams would not have any sort of future. And honestly, the Kevin Durant deal is like kind of the perfect blueprint for what I see a Damian Lillard trade looking like. I mean, they got Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges over to Brooklyn, along with 4 first round picks, 5 first round picks. So I think that's probably the more appropriate deal. But the question is like, what team is going to do that now? We've got to see which team's going to pull the
Yeah.
trigger.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's gonna be pretty exciting. It's probably gonna be pretty down for, the rest of this month. Now we're kind of entering like the dead
Yeah.
zone of the NBA, but we'll stay updated. And thank you so
we
much
have
for hopping on the
yeah.
podcast, Jude.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a treat. I haven't done like a podcast in like a year, so this was really great to get back and do a podcast. So thank you.
For sure, for sure. And we'll definitely have you back on and when
Sure.
when the
And I
season's
want
up.
and I want to give a shout out to Camiar. Camiar, he's also on Target Shore. I love that man. He's great, and you guys do a great job too. So this is a
Yeah.
great show. Keep it up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.